Hey, Marty.
Hey, Nathan.
Can you say a little bit about yourself?
A little bit. Here in the Houston area, grew up in Illinois, worked for Hewlett Packard in cybersecurity, and I've known you for a very long time.
And despite all that, I didn't realize you grew up in Illinois, and now your son's in Chicago, and I'm starting to wonder if all that's connected.
No, it's not.
Oh, okay.
I grew up in Peoria.
How far away from Chicago is Peoria?
Hour and a half, 2 hours.
So did you know that NASA is planning to send people to the moon in 2024?
I did.
How did you find out?
Well, I've heard you mention it. And to be honest, I'm not sure.
Most of the people I know are really hoping to get there soon because they're ready to move on to a different topic. But what do you think about it?
I'm somewhat ambivalent. While I like seeing us push limits, I like seeing us stretch and grow. I'm not sure necessarily what the return is on all that investment, if it's actually a practical gain. So that's my ignorance. I know that there's been a lot of scientific experimentation on the space station that has yielded better products, new science, things like that. So I'm not sure.
Do you know of anything specific from the International Space Station?
I do not.
I actually don't either, even though I study it. You would think that we would have like a list of these awesome achievements that we could just rattle off, saying, showing the return on investment, as opposed to just kind of a whole bunch of PhD papers.
Yep. So yeah, like I said, with the moon, I think it's neat, cool. The sci-fi part of me likes it. Economically, I don't know how much sense it makes.
Economically, if you're going to be using disposable rockets, probably doesn't make any more sense than disposable airplanes.
Yep.
What do you see as being like the biggest problem that's confronting humanity?
I mean, politics. Seems like everyone wants what the other person has at a global, civil unrest, people's rights not being recognized.
Yeah. Like any particular areas in mind that are like top of mind for you?
I mean, no, just in general. Domestically, I see a lot of crime. Of course, we had the whole BLM and things that happened with George Floyd. There's been, a rash of police mistakes. Someone was intended to be tasered and was shot. But then globally, like I said, we've got Israel, Middle East. They're just Korea, North Korea, Russia. I mean, cybersecurity. There's a lot of traffic from Russia and China and things like that. So I think those are my biggest concerns.
Yeah, I mean, what happened with what was the name of that pipeline?
The Colonial Pipeline?
Colonial Pipeline. I mean, that seemed easy. I mean, it's just like...
Yeah. So, at the end of the day, it's stealing, high-tech stealing, right?
Yeah.
And that's an issue that we've had probably pretty close since the dawn of man.
So I have a question. What do you see as the long-term future of humanity? Are we, destined to like eventually branch out into the rest of the solar system and figure out how to make it over to other star systems, and we start, really inhabiting the entire galaxy eventually? Or do you see some other future?
never thought about it very much. I think I'm fairly pessimistic about our future. I think we've, you know, as Star Trek would point out, we've shown ourselves to be a race that's violent and not prone to peace. So, how much longer can we survive before something escalates that ends things? I don't know. You know, I would love to live in the utopian society of Star Trek where money is irrelevant. Would like to see us get there.
War with China. It seems, Taiwan, we refuse to recognize them as a separate country. We have like this kind of unofficial guarantee of protecting Taiwan. Taiwan is really part of China and going to be reunified. They removed like the term peacefully from kind of like their strategy. China's military has been growing. They have aircraft carriers now and supersonic weapons, and I think the largest army in the world.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Just by number of people. Not that number of people really matter as much as maybe the technology. But I mean, this week just yesterday they launched 3 astronauts to their new space station that they're building.
True.
They've
Didn't they also recently launch things into space where they couldn't control the rockets coming down and?
How about didn't control? Implies lack of ability.
That's right. They chose not to. They chose not to invest in that.
They were like, the odds of hitting anything, it's not that bad, and the U.S. has been dumping their stuff in the Atlantic all these years. It was funny, their launch site, unlike the U.S.'s launch site, which is on the coast, the East Coast United States, and we launch over the Atlantic most of the time. Theirs is in the middle of their country, so on a routine basis, like first stages are just falling on villages.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
It's pretty interesting. Definitely a different strategy. But war of China, it seems inevitable almost.
I mean, I would like to think not. Personally, I would like to believe that there's a lot of tough talk, but people unwilling to actually execute, pull the trigger. But I don't know. There's been a lot of tough talk with Russia and Putin. A lot of tough talk from North Korea.
Yeah, except Putin annexed the Crimea, and it looks like he has his eyes on Ukraine.
Exactly.
So almost seems like that if China did invade Taiwan and we did nothing, then Russia would probably take over Ukraine.
And, I think Russia would almost view it as theirs anyway.
Yeah.
All the oil reserves. It's getting hot in here.
Yeah, we'll try to see. Looks like this Taiwan thing is really making you sweat. You could be a U.S. general. Just kidding. It is hot. I had thought that this room would hold the air a little bit better, but I guess you could put an igloo in the oven and it'd probably heat up on the inside too.
Probably would.
How are those coffee bottles, the thermoses? They really seem to keep things good. I should I need a bigger thermos bottle. Vacuum seal, yeah. A normal air supply, and just completely separated from outside. But if it was safe and affordable, would you go into space?
Would I? Absolutely. I guess it would depend on definition of safe and affordable.
We could use your definition. So let's figure out what they are. What's safe?
I mean, safe is guaranteed return. Yeah, I was thinking about that. That there's some raffles or some sort of bidding or whatever to be a civilian and go up with Jeff Bezos and all that, right? And I was thinking if I won and it didn't cost me anything, right? I certainly don't have $58 million to pay. Would I be willing to do it? And the reality is, no. There's just, number one, I'm not in the best of health, and number two, there's just too much that can go wrong. Technology's too new.
But I mean, one way to look at safety is, I mean, I'm sure there's all sorts of measures to it, but kind of one that seems intuitively meaningful would be how many people have to go before you feel comfortable.
I don't know. I mean, comfort's a feeling, and I don't know what would factor into it. You know, I consider my car safe. I have an expectation that I can get into it, that I can go where I'm going, and I actually arrive without injury. I have the expectation that air traffic is safe. Not always, but statistically it's safe. But when something's new, when you're the test pilots and you're testing supersonic flight, you know, how many of those had some unfortunate consequences, you know, early on?
Right. But I mean, how about this? If 100,000 people went to space and came back without any fatalities or injuries, would that make you comfortable? Maybe we should move over here.
So no. I guess to me it's a factor of how many trips. If 100,000 people made one trip, really big rocket, and it came back safe, I don't know that I would be willing to take a second flight.
I have
100,000 flights?
Yeah.
Sure.
And then affordable. I think one good unit of that that's like universally meaningful is how much of your yearly income would you be willing to spend on such a trip? Would it be like a whole year's worth of income, or half a year, or 5 years? You know, I mean, that seems like something that translates across countries and jobs.
So, 10%.
10% of a year. But have you ever spent more than 10% on like a family vacation?
Sure. But not just for me.
Not just for you. Yeah, it's true. Did you know that Discovery Channel is having a show next year called Who Wants to Be an Astronaut?
No, I didn't.
The winner goes to the International Space Station for 8 days. It's supposed to be like kind of like a reality TV show type contest. I was wondering, is that something you'd consider participating in?
Probably not. While I do think that flying to the International Space Station is relatively safe, we've certainly done it a number of times without incident. We've also had incidents with Challenger, with other things going on. At the end of the day, I think I'm far safer staying down here and enjoying life with my family than having that risk for one experience.
Yeah, I know. I mean, at the beginning of this project, I thought, yeah, I'd go to space, I'd love to. And then after listening and talking to people and thinking through it a little bit more, and I was like, you know, maybe I do need a little bit more guidance. I mean, like, there was this thing in February, Inspiration 4. Have you heard of that?
No, I haven't.
So this guy, Jared Isaacman, he is the CEO of Shift4 Payments. He owns his own fighter plane. that he flies around.
Cool.
I know. But anyway, he was doing this kind of promotional thing with St. Jude's, and basically he bought a trip to space for 4 people on a SpaceX Falcon 9 Starship, Dragon capsule. And they're actually going in about 100 days from now.
Cool.
So, but one of the ones was a random drawing of somebody that donated to St. Jude's during that month. And then another one was somebody who used Shift 4 payments, processing thing in an inspirational way and created a video about it.
Mm-hmm.
And then one of them is a childhood cancer survivor who had benefited from St. Jude's and is actually working at St. Jude's.
Oh, cool.
And then he himself. So those 4 people are going up later this year. They're calling the first all civilian.
So who's flying it? Remote?
Mainly remote, but they're all undergoing training. And Jared Isaacman's, he has jet flying experience, and he's officially the commander of it. But they remotely deliver supplies to the International Space Station all the time. We're really in the spam in a can type of situation. So that's kind of neat.
So Nathan, you've been doing this project, a person once a day. Why?
Well, it's hilarious to think about it after the past year. But I was working from home for 2 years before everybody else was. And I was really excited about us going back to the moon. And there was this person that was hired to be the associate administrator for the Human Exploration and Operations group at NASA that would be responsible to get there. And when he came on board, he had a little lapel pin with a number of days to the end of 2024 that he would update every day, to kind of keep everybody razor focused. We've got to get to the moon. This is all the days we have left. And he was highlighting a NASA employee as being sort of, a particular NASA employee highlighting their contribution for that day. And I kind of saw that. I was working from home, and I was like, hey, this would be a great project to actually force me to get out and actually interact with a person. Because, I know this seems kind of weird to everybody else, but I would go weeks without interacting with somebody outside the house. And we've gone almost half a whole year without interacting with people outside the house. So, but anyway, so that's how it got started.
Okay.
And now I'm so far into it, I have to see it through.
So, but I've known you for a long time, and it seems like you've always been interested in the moon, and why? What do you think about the economics of sustaining life on the moon and the practicality of it?
Yeah, the economics are really horrible right now. Until you get cheap access to space, it's really, you need to have some really compelling reason to do anything there. I think what's about to change is we're about to get that cheap access to space. I don't know if you've been following what SpaceX has been doing in Brownsville, actually in Boca Chica next to Brownsville. But they're building this 100% reusable spacecraft that can carry 100 people to space at a time. It's the most powerful rocket that's ever been built. And it's also going to be the cheapest per launch. And they can use it for point-to-point Earth travel. So you go from Houston to Okinawa in 35 minutes. And they say they could be profitable at the cost of an equivalent first-class airline ticket.
Really?
So you could do that for $10,000. And at the, during part of the flight, you're in free fall, and you'll be able to be weightless for 10-15 minutes. And you'll get to see the curvature of the Earth, the blackness of space. And I think whenever you start having everyday people flying on vehicles like this, it really changed people's perception about what the Earth is. Because I know we were taught, 9 planets or 8, depending on when you went to school. But the idea, we were like, oh, that's something else. I live on the Earth, it's huge, indestructible. It's everything. All those little dots. They're just holes in the top of the lid. It's like we're in a jar. But once I think people get a real sense of how finite the Earth is and how huge the universe is, I think why quibble over a little bit of territory here whenever we have all that? It's kind of
True, but it's costly, right?
It is.
You have to build the infrastructure. You have to supply the supplies, right?
Absolutely. I mean, it's like it would be like trying to live in this room forever, except also having my own air, and it'd be really difficult. But I think that's changing, right? Because SpaceX is talking about being able to produce 2 of these rockets a week. Each one would be able to do 3 flights a day. We're literally talking about thousands and thousands of flights. Like the shift in economics. I mean, it's like we're in the day of the Wright brothers plane, envisioning, airports and, United first class lounges and all that. I mean, it's really hard to show somebody the Wright brothers plane with their, 15-second flight, 20-second flight, and have anybody convincingly believe that you're going to have hundreds of people getting into a flying contraption going around the world. But obviously that happens, and these planes, they cost 100 million, 150 million. Maintaining them is expensive. You have to have runways and dedicated. Air traffic control system is amazing, but requires constant attention and training and everything. And we were able to do that, and now you and I can fly any place in the world within a day.
Absolutely, but what's the gain? So when I look at it, going to the moon is a difficult venture.
Yeah.
It seems to me that living in Antarctica, it is a very parallel, but a much less scaled down, right? Antarctica, harsh environment, you gotta live under a bubble, can't grow your own food, you probably get water, but other than that, you have to have supplies brought in.
Right.
We barely have one little colony in Antarctica. Why aren't we, exploring that as opposed to the thought of doing something probably 100 times more difficult in the moon? What's the gain?
Yeah, that's a good point. And another even maybe a more accessible place might be the Pacific. Why aren't we building artificial islands in the Pacific and really exploring and developing that area? You can take the globe and turn it, and all you can see is the Pacific. The Pacific is like half the world, and you can double our land right there. I think space is several different things. One is, so I think about a whole bunch of different ways. One is only like 1/700 billion of the sun's energy falls on the surface of the Earth.
Okay.
And that powers everything that's ever happened. Every plant that's grown, every AC that's ran, everything. So when you consider that, we actually have access to nuclear energy. We just need to find some better way to collect it. So there's some thoughts that you could build up a manufacturing facility on the moon, use the materials on the moon to actually create solar panels, more easily launch them off of the moon, be cheaper because less gravity, more atmosphere. You could actually just use some type of mass accelerator and actually literally shoot it into orbit using like a railgun type of thing. And then you can put these satellites around the sun in orbits, and then you have access to pretty much unlimited energy. But how to use that energy? Beaming it towards Earth is not really sure how to do that, and also that just exasperates kind of like the energy imbalance with the Earth, in the sense that the Earth is actually absorbing more energy than it's releasing, which is creating the kind of hotter climate. Right now, a lot of it is being absorbed by the oceans and the melting, but once that's done, it's going to be, I can show you what but you can use the energy in space. Why not have flying data centers, crunching on all sorts of different problems, and just send the data there, you get pretty much unlimited stuff. You could, there's all sorts of things you could do. But another thing is there's a lot of risks that humanity faces on Earth, such as, we talk about war, asteroid impact, pandemic, global climate change. So just having a pool of independent humanity someplace else kind of provides mitigation towards that risk. You kind of see something happens to humans on Earth, you have humans over here, they can kind of propagate the Earth. Something happens to humanity over there, you got fuel from Earth, so you have that.
So you foresee the moon someday being self-sustainable?
I think the moon would be really difficult.
Because, if that's plan B for the human race, what do you do if you have to be self-sustainable for that to happen?
It would have to be. I just don't think the moon necessarily would be easy to make self-sustainable. I think it may be easier to make like a wholly human constructed facility in space self-sustainable, because then you can spin it to get like 1G gravity, and you don't have to worry about having a 28-day day, which is like dealing with the coldest of night, and you can move it closer to Earth and make it easier for people to get to. I think Mars seems promising, it's like extremely cold. It's like living in Minnesota, it's winter. Would be a hot day. That would be a hot day on Mars. That would be equivalent to the days we're facing here. So that also seems, but I mean, Mars has almost a 24.5-hour day. The gravity is 1/3 that of Earth. The atmosphere is extremely thin. Like even though you're like flying up there, and that's like the top of the highest mountain is like extremely thick atmosphere compared to what's on Mars. So you're gonna have to live, but I mean, a lot more doable than the moon for sure. But so I see the moon as being like the closest stepping stone. You have to send out your explorers first, and then you go and develop. And right now the thing is, people are like, why you go to the moon? You've already done that. Go to Mars. And the thing that I think a lot of people don't realize is that astronauts are responsible for so little of their existence, in the sense that most of it is being controlled and assisted from the ground. And like the people on the International Space Station, they're in constant communication now. They have a problem, they call up engineers down here, get to work, they beam up, they send up supplies or send up instructions. But as you're moving away from the Earth, you're talking about like a 15-minute time delay between communication, so you now need to be able to help yourself. You can't get resupplied. So the moon provides kind of like a good trial ground, and we don't know that much about the moon. We discovered about, I think 11, 12 years ago that there's water ice in the poles of the moon. What's there? How can we use that? I'm kind of excited about, maybe there's some interesting organics that have been preserved in ice from like asteroid impacts on the Earth, and some of it actually flying up into space and having not preserved it. It's kind of interesting. There could be some really amazing, the monolith could be on the moon.
So one more question then, before we wrap it up, so going to the moon, significant investment, very significant investment. Questionable at best economics. Why invest all that resources into that as opposed to, we started off, what's your biggest worry here, actually taking that and investing it into the Earth to mitigate those risks?
Yeah, that constantly comes up. You got people that are hungry. You have global climate change. You have war, social injustice, pollution. All these types of things. The amazing thing is the first time we went to the moon, the world's population is half of what it is now. So some people say, oh, well, that means we have twice the number of mouths. But more importantly, we have twice the number of brains. These are brains that can solve problems, And also, they're more connected. They're hooked up to the internet, and they're empowered. They can get a 3D printer, order anything for Amazon or what have you. They can form teams that are across the world working on problems.
Absolutely.
So, it's just like, I feel like we waste all that potential somehow. Like there's some reason that there's like, it almost seems like unlimited potential. It's like kind of back to that analogy about 700 billion as the sun's energy only falls on the earth. I feel like we're only using 1/700 billionth of our human capacity. It seems so kind of wasted on either netting out somebody else's capacity. I mean, so much of it is put on betting and like the stock market as an example. I mean, so many brains, instead of saying, how can we make this robotic arm more intelligent, or how can we create a material like a plastic-like material that could be infinitely recyclable, and people are going, do you think this stock is going to go up today or that one? And if there's some way we can take that brain power and actually refocus it on human problems, I mean, where could we get it? I mean, going to the moon would seem like pennies, because we'd be able to do, kind of anything. I don't really answer your question. I guess my thought is, it's like having a room of 100 people, only one of them is doing stuff, and the 99 other people are going, I wish that one person would work on my problem. And not realizing that there are like 99 people there and we can work on everybody's problems, so we can just figure it out.
Well, why do you suppose that is? Why don't we get people solving Earth's problems, but seemingly people willing to invest and solve these the space? Why?
Well, I mean, I think it's back to like you said. People are looking for recognition from their peers, and as a society, we value rich people, we value lucky people, and we value people with gold medals. I mean, look at all these Olympians who are, spending a lot of time trying to see the limits of the human body, and all these, people trying to like all the like YouTubers out there trying to do exceptional things to get attention and get the most subscribers. So I think there's a part of humanity that just wants to, kind of show off, as it were. But I think once people start valuing solving real problems, people will work on real problems, but it's not what we value.
To me, I wonder if part of it might be, I don't, but let's say I live in a family, there's domestic strife, people using drugs, whatever, dark place. I think there's an inclination that I would rather focus on something outside than try to fix what's going on inside. And I wonder how much that factors in, right? The moon's cool, space is cool. Our problems here, leave that to someone else.
But it's kind of interesting. Interesting that the two people that are really probably investing most of their personal money in space is Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos.
Mm-hmm.
So Elon Musk, you have like Tesla and the solar energy company, both meant to kind of solve problems here on Earth about being able to get us off of using chemical energy in the sense of having to send petroleum products all around the world and be able to have a more fungible source of transportation using electric energy, which can be produced through lots and lots of things. Even using like petroleum to create electrical energy in contained environments may be less harmful to the environment, because you can capture the pollutants a lot easier and make it a lot more efficient. And also you can optimize it for whatever environment the generator is in, as opposed to the car, which is constantly going into different environments and might be better calibrated for some than others. So I mean, that's kind of somebody that's interested in space and is solving problems here on Earth.
Sure.
And then on the Jeff Bezos side, we've been kind of stuck in our homes, and we have like Amazon's been amazing. It's just like It's just like, you want something, you click on it, and a couple of days later it shows up, which solves a very real problem here on Earth.
It does.
Also creates a very real problem on Earth, but that's a whole different story. So I mean, I see them as being balanced between those two, Earth problem and future
Okay.
problems. Kind of.
Oh, well, thank you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it, Marty. It's such a joy to get to talk to you. I see this as being a time capsule for people 50 years, 100 years from now that are kind of looking back at humanity before we take these new steps in another world. That's the beginning of a much larger journey. And is there anything about our time or our world that you think would be good for them to know? That, I mean, just kind of looking back 100 years from now in like 1921, what would you have wanted somebody to tell you about that time? Like, what kind of curiosity questions do you have?
I don't know. I think people in the future, if they were to look back at this, have the benefit of history. Probably better aware of our environment than we are because they have the benefit of history. I don't know. Never thought of that.
Well, good deal. I really appreciate your time, Marty.
Thank you.